Jill Levine is a legal officer with the Free Speech Union. They funded legal representation for Lucy's appeal.
So Lucy had a very visceral reaction to the terrible events of the Southport massacre. And I think for Lucy that resonated ever more strongly. She herself had lost a child, and she herself, after 3.5 hours, having taken herself out for a walk, came home and thought, no, I don't want to be saying things like this. This is the wrong thing to say, and deleted it. She had expressed a horrible point of view. I think...
Because who among us hasn't called for mass slaughter? I mean, lots of people watched that. Lots of people watched the horrendous events that happened in Southport without calling for mass slaughter and the ritualistic burning alive of hundreds of innocent people.
Do you really think she meant that, Femi? Do you really think that that's what she meant for people to do?
I mean, we keep acting like because the riots hadn't started yet, that means that she was saying in a vacuum and had no realistic possibility that that could happen. I'm sorry, in November 2022, they did try and firebomb an asylum centre in Dover. We have an established history of that being done, and she called for it to happen again. And I think what's missing from this conversation is there's been across the media, complete lack of empathy for what it was like for ethnic minority people during that period. Because I know that I personally woke up from a nightmare where I believed that I was being pulled from my car, as happened to that Asian man in Hull. And so I woke up with my fists clenched, looking around the room because I believed it was really happening. Knowing that there was a risk that if we stepped outside of our door, one of those mobs that was roaming the country might hurt us purely because of the color of our skin. That is what posts like that led to. And so if Lucy Connolly had simply been given a basic slap on the wrist, oh, we all make mistakes, who hasn't called for mass slaughter, then that would have sent the message that sort of thing is okay to do, and it will just be a matter of time until you see it happen again. So I'm glad that anybody that considers saying, let's go out and hunt minorities, now knows to think twice.
And do you read anything into the fact that she took it down within hours?
Yeah, if I posted calling for mass slaughter, I'd probably want to take it down to avoid getting in trouble too. Like, the fact is, she made that choice to do that. She chose to see a situation that had nothing to do with asylum seekers in those hotels, because the killer in Southport was born here in the UK. She chose to direct violent, racist anger towards a group of vulnerable people. And what I want people to remember is, imagine if last summer, instead of what we saw hundreds of Muslim people running around the country, trying to burn down churches, or targeting white people in vulnerable areas, maybe a shelter, a women's shelter, that sort of thing. And we'd seen that. And a brown woman had chosen to tweet, I think we should burn down white churches and attack white people and call me racist for all I care. Is there a single one of the people that's currently defending Lucy Connolly who wouldn't call that person a terrorist because they were actively supporting violence for political reasons? Every single one of them would be. So I think it's extremely telling that we now have people defending Lucy Connolly, whether it's Rupert Lowe or anybody from the Reform Party, because it shows that their supposed care for being anti-terrorism and pro-national security was never about national security. Because what we saw last summer was probably the most widespread crisis of terrorism the UK has seen in decades. And what has been the response? It's been to defend the people who incited it.
Well, I don't think there's any suggestion that was any terrorism involved here.
Jill, I have a question.
Sure.
Well, how do you define terrorism? What would be your definition of terrorism, just out of curiosity?
Well, I'm not here to talk about terrorism. My understanding is that terrorism...
You said it wasn't terrorism, so I'm asking you...
The court did not, the prosecutor did not seek any terrorist charges, and the court did not convict her of any terrorism.
But there is a difference between between a court being able to convict someone beyond reasonable doubt for something and what us would naturally call terrorism. Because I believe that the word terrorism means to pursue or use a threat of violence, illegal violence, for political ends. Now, what would you call telling people to go burn, or specifically going to burn down hotels full of refugees because you're anti-immigration? Would you not consider that to be terrorism?
Well, we don't need to get caught up in a debate about whether this was terrorism or not.
My personal opinion is people say intemperate things all the time, and I think the police should focus on conduct over words. That's my personal view.
Jill, calling your boss a nitwit is intemperate language. Calling for the mass slaughter by fire of hundreds of innocent people, that goes a little bit beyond that.
But just to bear in mind that this was a lady who'd never been in trouble with the law before, had an entirely a clean record, was suddenly thrust into a prison cell and actually denied bail, which I think in itself was excessive in the sense that none of the bail conditions that you normally consider, whether you give someone bail or not, you look at whether they're a flight risk, whether they have previous convictions, are they a threat?
I completely agree with you. I mean, she was a childminder, she was a mother, and you call for one mass slaughter with fire and it all goes to hell? It's incredible. It's like cancel culture all over again. Like, is nobody allowed to say, let's go burn people during a national crisis anymore?